I was a new nurse at an old hospital and had only been working there for a couple of months. The hospital, with its creaky floors and dimly lit corridors, always gave me a sense of unease. But I was determined to prove myself as a competent nurse, despite the eerie atmosphere. One night, I was assigned to care for Mr. Thompson, an elderly man who had been admitted for pneumonia. As I entered his room, I noticed he was staring intently at the corner of the room, his eyes wide with fear. "Mr. Thompson, is everything all right?" I asked, trying to hide my apprehension. He turned to me, his voice trembling. "There's a girl standing in the corner. She's been there for hours, just watching me." I glanced towards the corner, but saw nothing except shadows cast by the flickering light. "There's no one there, Mr. Thompson. It must be your imagination." But he shook his head vigorously. "No, she's real. She's been haunting me since I got here." I reassured him as best as I could, but his fear was palpable. Throughout the night, he would glance nervously at the corner, muttering about the ghostly girl. As the hours passed, an unsettling feeling crept over me. I couldn't shake the sensation that we were not alone in the room. Every so often, I would catch a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there. As the clock struck midnight, I decided to check on Mr. Thompson again. But when I entered his room, he was no longer there. Panic surged through me as I frantically searched the room, but he was nowhere to be found. Just then, a chilling breeze swept through the room, causing the hairs on the back of my neck to stand on end. I turned towards the corner and saw her, the ghostly girl that Mr. Thompson had spoken of. She was pale and translucent, her eyes hollow and empty. She stared at me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I wanted to run, to flee from the room and never look back. But something held me in place. A morbid curiosity mingled with a sense of duty to my patient. "What do you want?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. The ghostly girl tilted her head slightly, as if considering her response. Then, in a voice that sounded like it came from the depths of the grave, she spoke. "I am trapped here, cursed to wander these halls for eternity. But you can help me." Her words sent a chill coursing through my veins. "How can I help you?" She beckoned me closer, her spectral hand outstretched. "Find the locket. It holds the key to my freedom. Find it and set me free." I hesitated, unsure whether to trust the ghostly apparition before me. But something in her eyes, a desperation mingled with sorrow, compelled me to listen. "Where can I find the locket?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She pointed towards the hospital's abandoned wing, a place rumored to be haunted by restless spirits. With that, she vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the darkness. Determined to uncover the truth, I ventured into the abandoned wing of the hospital. The air was thick with dust and the scent of decay, sending a shiver down my spine. As I made my way towards the attic, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows danced along the walls, whispering secrets long forgotten. Finally, I reached the attic and began my search. Boxes piled high with old medical equipment and yellowed patient records lined the walls, creating a maze of forgotten relics. But amidst the chaos, I spotted it, a small, tarnished locket nestled among the debris. With trembling hands, I reached out and grasped it, feeling its weight in my palm. As I held the locket, a sense of foreboding washed over me. I knew that by opening it, I would unleash forces beyond my comprehension. But I also knew that it was the only way to fulfill my promise to the ghostly girl. With a deep breath, I opened the locket, revealing a faded photograph inside. It was of a young girl, her face filled with innocence and joy. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed through the attic, sending me reeling backward. I looked up to see the ghostly girl standing before me, her form flickering in and out of existence. "You've done it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the din. "You've set me free." As she spoke, a blinding light enveloped her, illuminating the attic in an otherworldly glow. And then, with a final wisp of smoke, she vanished into the ether, leaving behind only silence. I stood there, alone in the attic, the weight of what had just transpired settling over me. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was also a sense of peace, for I had helped a soul find redemption, and in doing so, had discovered a strength within myself that I never knew existed. My parents got divorced in 1997, and I was born in 1990, so I was 7 at the time. They stayed friends, but my mom moved out to my grandparents' old house. My grandparents had quite a lot of money, and had recently moved without selling the house. So there was no problem for them to let my mother and us move into their old house. We ended up living there for about 5 years. It was me, my mother, and my 2 sisters who are a few years older than me, and our dog. The house had 3 floors. The ground floor, basement, and upper floor where me and my sisters slept. The basement was the most horrific place in the house. The stairs led from the basement up to the first floor, then to the second floor, like a spiral. And most of the steps would creak and make lots of sound when stepping on them. Several times a week, you would hear footsteps slowly walking from the basement up the stairs. taking a short break at the ground floor, and then moving to the second floor. Most of the time, the steps would stop at my older sister's room, but it would vary and sometimes stop outside my room or my middle sister's room. We all heard it. My mom did not like to talk about it, but my sisters and I often talked about it the day after and confirmed hearing it outside whatever room it stopped by. We all hated going down to the basement. It was a big, big basement that you would think children would enjoy playing in, but we hated it. Our dog never went down to the basement. She hated it just as much as us. All kinds of minor things happened down in the basement. The light would turn off randomly, things moved, and you could often hear stuff moving down there even though no one was down there. One evening, I and my sisters were playing with walkie-talkies, trying to get to the local police channel. This time, the voice in the walkie-talkie was different and sounded much closer. The voice said all kinds of things. It was speaking directly to my oldest sister and said that it was going to hurt her. It even spoke her name, but I don't think it ever answered our questions. We got scared and turned off the walkie-talkie. A minute or so later, our dog ran into our room and barked out into nothing. Our dog was large and protective of us kids and kept staying in the room, barking, which had never happened before or after. Another time, I and my mom were home, but my sisters and dog were away. I was playing up in my room and my mom was doing whatever moms do. Suddenly, I heard really loud footsteps from the basement, even though I was on the second floor in my room, walking, almost running up from the basement, then continuing up the stairs to the second floor. I remember my heart just stopped when listening to the footsteps. My mom never walks that heavy and angry. The footsteps continued until outside my room, then stopped and my door was slammed hard. The door closed and I screamed and cried. My mom raced up the stairs and tried to open the door, but she couldn't. It was as if the door was locked, though I don't think the door had a locking mechanism. My mom shouted to me to be calm while she ran down to get tools to tear the door down. While she was down, and 7-8-year-old I was crying, the door suddenly unlocked itself and opened. Another time when my sisters and my dog were away, there was a storm, and for some reason, I was deathly afraid of the thunder. I have never been afraid of thunder before or after, but this night I was, and in the basement, everything went crazy. We heard things thrown around down there, glass shattering, which we confirmed in the morning after that glass and stuff had been thrown around and shattered. Footsteps were running up and down the stairs, and my mother hugged each other, both scared of what we were hearing. At one time, we were sitting in the living room, just being deathly scared. The entrance door flew open, then closed, opened, and closed again for several minutes. It was a storm outside, and it was blowing, but this was not the storm. Many more minor things happened, but these are what came to my mind. It seemed to me that it got worse when my dog was not around, and it was more after my older sister,